They say the woods have a way of swallowing secrets, but sometimes they swallow people too. Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 terrifying, true encounters from the deepest, darkest corners of the wilderness. First, a land surveyor in the Idaho mountains realizes he isn't just being followed. He's being hunted by something that can mimic his own voice. Then, a hike with a best friend turns into a literal death trap when a secret trail leads to a horrifying betrayal. And finally, a solo camper in the Ozarks discovers that some things in the woods don't just watch you. They wait for the fog to hide what they truly are. Lock your doors, turn down the lights, and let's head into the deep woods. But remember, once you enter, the trees might never let you leave. I've been a freelance land surveyor for over 15 years. My profession often takes me to places where humanity's footprint has long been washed away by the tides of nature. Dense, suffocating forests, jagged mountain peaks, and silent valleys where cellular signals are non-existent. I used to prefer the solitude. The silence of the woods felt more honest than the noise of the city. But that was before the incident in the Clearwater region of Idaho 4 years ago. That trip didn't just break my body, it shattered my soul. I had been hired to locate and verify ancient boundary markers on a massive, rugged parcel of land. Remote is an understatement. It required a grueling 6-mile hike through treacherous terrain just to reach the spot where I established my base camp. As per my protocol, I filed my route with the local ranger station and packed a week's worth of supplies. The first day was uneventful. I found 3 markers, logged the coordinates, and retreated to my tent before the sun dipped below the horizon. On the second morning, the atmosphere shifted. The weather forecast had predicted light snow, but what arrived was a relentless, blinding whiteout. Gray, heavy clouds swallowed the mountain peaks, and the wind began to howl through the cedar trees like a choir of the damned. My next marker was only a mile away. Against my better judgment, I decided to push through. I thought I could beat the storm. I was wrong. The terrain was a nightmare of hidden traps. Under the fresh powder lay black ice and jagged rocks. As I navigated a steep embankment, my boot lost its grip on a slick patch of ice. I fell. It wasn't a graceful slide. It was a violent 15-foot tumble down a rocky slope. The silence of the forest was punctured by a sickening **crack**, the sound of my right tibia snapping under the weight of my body and gear. The pain was an explosion of white light behind my eyes, so intense that I blacked out before I even hit the bottom. When I regained consciousness, I was lying in a drift of snow. My right leg was twisted at an impossible, grotesque angle. Shards of bone had pierced the skin, and hot, crimson blood was already soaking into the pristine white snow. I was 6 miles from help, immobilized, and the temperature was dropping fast. But as I lay there, gasping for air, a primal instinct flared up inside me. I felt eyes on me. I looked back up toward the top of the embankment I had fallen from. Through the swirling snow and thick mist, I saw a shape. It was tall, motionless, and darker than the shadows of the trees. It didn't look like a ranger, and it certainly didn't look like a hiker. It just stood there, watching me bleed. I blinked, and it was gone. The realization hit me. I was no longer the surveyor. I was the prey. With the storm intensifying, I knew I couldn't stay in the open. I reached into my pack, pulled out a roll of nylon webbing and a sturdy branch, and began the agonizing process of splinting my own leg. Every movement felt like a hot iron being driven into my marrow. I screamed, but the wind swallowed the sound. I began to crawl. Using my elbows and my one good leg, I dragged myself through the freezing slush. Behind me, I left a wide, jagged trail of smeared blood, a red road that pointed directly to my location. After 20 minutes of crawling, I heard it, the distinct snap of a heavy branch in the thicket to my right. I stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs. Something was packing me, staying just out of sight in the trees, following the scent of my open wound. The sun was dying, and as the shadows stretched long and thin, I realized that whatever was stalking me wasn't waiting for me to die of the cold. It was waiting for the dark. The transition from dusk to true night in the Idaho wilderness is not a gradual fade. It is an aggressive takeover. As the temperature plummeted, the moisture in my breath began to freeze on my collar, and the agony in my shattered leg evolved from a sharp burn into a dull, rhythmic throb that pulsed in time with my failing heart. I was leaving a literal trail of breadcrumbs for whatever was behind me, except my breadcrumbs were warm, steaming droplets of blood. I had been crawling for what felt like hours, my elbows raw and bleeding through my heavy jacket when I saw it, a dark, angular shape silhouetted against the pale snow. It was a small, dilapidated trapper cabin, half buried in a drift. It looked abandoned, its windows like empty eye sockets, but to me, it was a fortress. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, I dragged my useless lower body across the threshold and kicked the heavy wooden door shut. I fumbled for the iron bolt and slammed it home just as a heavy weight thudded against the exterior of the cabin. Thump it. The entire structure groaned. It wasn't the wind. Something had followed me to the door and was now testing the strength of the wood. I slumped against the wall, clutching my surveyor's axe, my lungs burning as I tried to quiet my ragged breathing. For a long time, there was nothing but the whistling of the storm outside. Then, the scratching started. It began at the base of the door, a slow, methodical scraping of claws against timber. It sounded like someone peeling bark off a tree with a dull knife. I huddled in the corner of the cabin, my flashlight off to save the battery, draped in an old, moth-eaten elk hide I found on a rusted cot. The interior of the cabin smelled of damp earth and ancient rot. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. A new sound replaced it, a soft, rhythmic tapping on the glass of the high, narrow window. Tap, tap, tap. I looked up, my eyes adjusting to the dark. Through the frosted pane, I saw a pale, elongated hand pressed against the glass. The fingers were too long, the skin a sickly translucent white, and the nails were jagged and black. It wasn't a bear's paw. It looked hauntingly, terrifyingly human, yet entirely alien. Then came the voice. It wasn't a growl or a scream. It was a perfect, crystalline mimicry of the ranger I had spoken to at the station 3 days prior. "You all right in there, buddy? Just checking your route. Open up, it's freezing out here." The voice was identical. The cadence, the accent, it was him. But I knew the ranger station was 6 miles away through a blizzard. No human could have tracked me this fast without a snowmobile, and there was no engine sound, only the howling wind. My blood ran colder than the ice outside. I gripped the axe handle so hard my knuckles turned white. "Go away," I croaked, my voice breaking. The response was an immediate, jarring shift. The ranger's friendly voice dissolved into a distorted, multi-tonal screech that sounded like metal grinding on stone. The cabin shook as something threw its full weight against the walls, circling the perimeter with impossible speed. I heard the creature scramble onto the roof, its heavy thuds vibrating through the rotting ceiling beams directly above my head. It was looking for a way in. It knew I was trapped. It knew I was broken. And as a thin layer of dust drifted down from the ceiling onto my face, I realized the old wood wouldn't hold much longer. The ceiling beams groaned under the unnatural weight of the thing on the roof. Every time it moved, bits of rotted wood and frozen dust fell onto my face, stinging my eyes. The mimicry had stopped. The creature was no longer pretending to be a ranger. Now, it was making a sound I can only describe as a wet, clicking vibration, like a massive insect chattering in the dark. I knew I couldn't stay a sitting duck. The cabin was a coffin, and the wood was too brittle to withstand a concentrated attack. My leg was a throbbing pillar of fire, but the adrenaline, that raw, chemical surge of survival, overrode the agony. I began to scan the room with my fading flashlight. In the corner, under a pile of rusted trapping gear, I found a gallon jug of old kerosene and a box of Strike Anywhere matches. A desperate, suicidal plan began to form in my mind. I dragged myself toward the center of the room, dousing the dry, porous floorboards and the ancient elk hide in the foul-smelling liquid. If I couldn't outrun it, I would make the cabin a place it didn't want to be. Suddenly, the roof gave way. A pale, clawed foot punched through the cedar shingles just inches from my head. The creature let out a deafening, ear-piercing shriek that sounded like 1,000 dying rabbits. It was trying to drop directly onto me. I didn't hesitate. I struck a match and dropped it into the puddle of kerosene. The cabin erupted. The fire took hold of the dry timber with a hungry roar. The creature on the roof screamed again, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, as thick black smoke and orange flames licked through the hole in the ceiling. I didn't wait to see what it looked like. I threw my weight against the back window, the only one not facing the creature's original position, and rolled out into the freezing snow. The contrast was a physical blow. The heat of the fire was replaced by the biting, sub-zero wind of the Idaho night. I didn't look back at the burning cabin. I crawled. I crawled with a strength I didn't know I possessed, dragging my broken limb through the drifts, my eyes fixed on the distant, dark tree line. Behind me, I could hear the cabin collapsing, the fire hissing as the snow melted around it, and that same rhythmic clicking sound echoing through the trees. It was still alive, and it was still following. I spent the next 4 hours in a blur of delirium and pain. I reached a small rocky outcrop near a frozen creek bed and pulled myself into a narrow crevice. I covered myself in snow and pine needles, trying to mask my scent and hide my heat signature. I clutched my surveyor's axe to my chest, my breathing shallow and silent. I watched the shadows of the forest move, seeing the pale, spindly legs of the thing as it paced the creek bed just 20 feet away. It was sniffing the air, its long, distorted neck twitching as it mimicked the sound of my own heavy breathing to try and draw me out. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I waited until the first gray, dismal light of dawn began to bleed through the canopy. As the sun rose, the creature retreated into the deepest shadows of the canyon, seemingly repelled by the light. I used the last of my strength to crawl toward the logging road I knew was nearby. I was found 3 hours later by a search party. They said it was a miracle I survived the cold and the blood loss. When the rangers went back to investigate the burned cabin, they found something they couldn't explain. There were no animal tracks around the site, no bears, no mountain lions. Instead, they found a circle of scorched earth where the cabin had stood, and inside the perimeter, they found dozens of small, hand-carved wooden dolls, all shaped like human beings, each one missing its right leg. I never went back to the Clearwater region. I don't survey solo anymore, because I know that out there in the silent places of the world, there are things that can take your voice, your face, and your life, and they are always hungry for the dark. The woods have a way of swallowing secrets, but I never thought they would try to swallow me. It started as a simple suggestion on a humid Saturday afternoon. My friend Sienna, someone I had known for years, but only recently started hanging out with again, called me with an unusual amount of excitement in her voice. She told me about a secret trail she had discovered, a place deep in the local state park that wasn't on the official maps. "It's beautiful," she had whispered over the phone. "Quiet, no hikers, no noise, just us." At the time, I didn't find her tone odd. I found it adventurous. We packed light, some water, a few snacks, and our phones and headed out. As we drove toward the edge of the wilderness, the suburban houses gave way to towering pines and thick, tangled brush. The further we went, the more the trees seemed to lean in over the road, as if trying to hide the path behind us. When we arrived at the trailhead, I noticed something immediately. There were no other cars, no families, no dog walkers, nothing. The silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of insects in the tall grass. Sienna didn't hesitate. She stepped onto the dirt path with a strange, focused energy, her eyes darting toward the thicket as if she were looking for a signal. "Are you sure this is a public trail?" I asked, my internal alarm bells beginning to ring a faint, distant warning. "Totally," she replied without looking back. "I've been here a dozen times, trust me." As we hiked deeper, the canopy overhead began to knit together, blocking out the sun and plunging the forest into a premature, murky twilight. The air grew cooler, smelling of damp earth and rotting leaves. Sienna was leading the way, setting a pace that was uncomfortably fast. She kept choosing the forks in the path without a second thought, turning left, then a sharp right, then left again into a stretch of woods where the trees grew so close together you had to turn sideways to pass. I started to lose my sense of direction. Sienna, maybe we should head back. I don't recognize any of this. She stopped abruptly. We were at a fork in the trail where the ground was strangely flat and cleared of debris. She turned to face me, and for the first time that day, I saw an expression on her face that I didn't recognize. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I thought I knew. "You go first," she said. Her voice was flat, almost mechanical. "I want to take a photo of you walking into the clearing. The light is perfect." I looked ahead. The path she wanted me to take led into a dense, dark hollow where the mist was settling thick on the ground. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I didn't want to go first. I wanted to turn around and run, but the pressure of her gaze and the fear of looking crazy pushed me forward. "Okay," I whispered, "just stay right behind me." I took 10 steps into the dark hollow, the dry leaves crunching like breaking bones under my feet. I waited for the sound of her following me. I waited for the click of her camera, but there was only silence. I turned around to tell her to hurry up, but the path behind me was empty. Sienna was gone. "Sienna," I called out. My voice sounded small and fragile against the vastness of the trees. No answer. "Sienna, this isn't funny." Then I heard it. Not Sienna's voice, but the sound of heavy boots hitting the dirt. 2 sets of footsteps, and they weren't coming from where Sienna had been. They were coming from the thicket directly in front of me. Out of the shadows, 2 tall figures emerged. They were wearing dark hoodies, their faces obscured by white, expressionless plastic masks. They didn't say a word. They just started walking toward me, fanning out to cut off my escape. The silence of the hollow was shattered by the rhythmic, heavy crunch of boots on frost-covered leaves. The 2 masked figures didn't run. They didn't have to. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized confidence, fanning out like wolves herding a wounded deer. The white plastic of their masks caught the dim, filtered light of the canopy, making them look like faceless ghosts rising from the earth. "Sienna," I screamed again, my voice cracking into a jagged sob. "Sienna, help me." No answer, only the wind whistling through the skeletal branches and the steady approach of the strangers. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe this was a prank. Maybe Sienna was hiding, waiting to jump out and laugh. But as one of the figures reached into his oversized hoodie and pulled out a length of thick, dark rope, the reality of the situation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a game. This was a harvest. I bolted. I didn't head back toward the trail. They were already blocking that path. Instead, I dove headlong into the dense, thorny underbrush to my left. Thorns tore at my skin and snagged my clothes, but I didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline had turned my blood into liquid fire. I could hear them behind me, not shouting, not calling out, just the heavy, relentless sound of their footsteps and the snapping of branches as they pushed through the woods with ease. They knew this terrain. I was stumbling blindly through a labyrinth of shadows, but they moved as if they had walked these woods 1,000 times. Every time I thought I had gained a lead, I would glimpse a flash of white plastic through the trees, closing the gap. "Sienna, please," I wailed, hopping against hope that my friend was just lost. Suddenly, I tripped over a moss-covered log and went down hard. My chin slammed into the dirt, and for a second the world spun in shades of gray and black. I scrambled to my knees, gasping for air, and looked back. One of the masked men was standing only 20 feet away. He stopped and tilted his head, watching me struggle. He didn't say a word, but the way he stood there, calm, patient, and predatory, told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't worried about me getting away. He knew exactly where this trail ended. I forced myself up and kept running, my lungs burning, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached a small clearing where the trees thinned out, and for a moment I thought I saw a way out. But then I saw her. Sienna was standing at the far edge of the clearing. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was just standing there, her arms crossed, watching me with a blank, unreadable expression. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't calling the police. She was just staring at the screen, then back at me. "Sienna, they're right behind me. Run," I gasped, stumbling toward her. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. As I got closer, I saw the two masked figures emerge from the woods behind me. They didn't grab her. They didn't even acknowledge her. They just stepped into the clearing and stopped, forming a semicircle around me. Sienna looked at me, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not guilt, but a cold, clinical curiosity. "I told you the light was perfect here," she said. Her voice was a flat, chilling monotone that didn't belong to the friend I thought I knew. She turned her back on me and started walking down a narrow, hidden path I hadn't seen before. The two men began to close in, the one with the rope stepping forward. I realized then that I hadn't been invited on a hike. I had been delivered. I stood frozen in the center of the clearing, the world tilting on its axis. My best friend was walking away as if she were leaving a boring movie, while two faceless hunters closed the distance. The one with the rope stopped and began to untie a knot, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't need to rush. Sienna had led me into a natural cage, a clearing surrounded by dense, impassable thickets and a steep ravine. "Sienna, why?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't stop. She didn't even turn her head. She just kept walking down that hidden path until the shadows swallowed her whole. The first man lunged. Panic, raw and electric, finally broke through my shock. I didn't think. I just reacted. As he reached for my shoulder, I dropped to the ground, kicking out at his shins with every ounce of strength I had left. I felt the impact travel up my leg, and a muffled grunt came from behind the plastic mask as he stumbled. I didn't wait. I scrambled toward the only direction they hadn't fully blocked, the steep, rocky ravine. It was a suicide drop, but the alternative was the rope. I threw myself over the edge, sliding and tumbling down the jagged slope. Rocks tore at my palms and branches whipped across my face, but I didn't stop until I hit the freezing water of a shallow creek at the bottom. I didn't look back. I ran through the water, the numbing cold helping to mask the sound of my footsteps. I ran until my lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass, pushing through dense brush and thorns that I would have never dared touch under normal circumstances. I didn't follow a trail. I followed the direction of the setting sun, knowing the main road lay somewhere to the west. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of a distant engine reached my ears. I burst through the final line of trees and collapsed onto the gravel shoulder of the highway. I flagged down a passing truck, my clothes shredded, my face covered in mud and blood. The driver was terrified, but he let me in. "Please," I gasped, "just drive." I called the police from the truck, but when they arrived at the trailhead an hour later, the clearing was empty. There was no sign of the masked men, no rope, and most disturbingly, no sign of Sienna. Her car was gone. The most chilling part of the entire ordeal happened 2 hours later. I was sitting in the hospital, getting my scratches cleaned when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sienna. "Where did you go? I waited at the fork for 20 minutes and then went back to the car. I thought you ditched me. I'm heading home now." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. She was lying. She had stood in that clearing and watched them hunt me. She had been the architect of the entire nightmare. I never replied. I never saw her again. I moved to a different city 3 months later, but the damage was done. To this day, I can't walk into a forest without looking over my shoulder, and I never, ever let anyone walk behind me. Because the scariest thing in the woods isn't a monster or a ghost. It's the person you think you can trust, leading you into the dark. I've spent most of my life outdoors. As an experienced hiker and amateur photographer, the wilderness was my sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the modern world faded into the rustle of leaves and the rush of mountain streams. But during a solo trek through a particularly remote stretch of the Ozark National Forest, the sanctuary turned into a tomb. The day started with an eerie, unnatural stillness. Usually, the woods are alive with the sounds of squirrels, birds, and the distant hum of insects. But as I ascended higher into the limestone bluffs, the forest fell silent. Not a single leaf stirred. The air felt heavy, charged with a static tension that made the hair on my arms stand up. By late afternoon, a thick, rolling fog began to spill over the ridges. It wasn't the usual light mountain mist. This was a dense, yellow-tinged vapor that seemed to swallow the light. Within minutes, my visibility was reduced to less than 10 feet. Every tree looked like a distorted limb reaching out from the gray void. I knew I had to set up camp immediately before I lost the trail entirely. I found a small, flat clearing sheltered by a massive, lightning-scarred oak tree. As I hammered in my tent stakes, the silence was finally broken, but not by a sound I recognized. It was a low, rhythmic clicking, like two dry bones being struck together. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I paused, my heart thudding against my ribs, and listened. Click, click, click. Just a woodpecker, I whispered to myself, though I knew no woodpecker sounded that metallic, that calculated. I retreated into my tent, zipping the flap tight, and tried to focus on my book by the light of my headlamp. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. It wasn't the feeling of a mountain lion or a bear. It was the sensation of a cold, intelligent gaze boring through the nylon fabric of my tent. Around 2:00 a.m., the temperature plummeted. I woke up shivering, the air inside the tent so cold I could see my breath. And that's when I heard it. A soft, muffled sob coming from just outside the tent. Is someone there? I asked, my hand trembling as I reached for my knife. A voice responded. It was high-pitched, trembling, and hauntingly familiar. It was the voice of my younger sister, Sarah. Please, I'm lost. It's so cold out here, please let me in. My blood turned to ice. Sarah lived 3 states away. There was no way she was here, in the middle of a restricted wilderness area at 2 in the morning. I sat frozen, the voice continuing to beg, repeating the exact same phrases with the exact same inflection, over and over again. Please, I'm lost. It's so cold out here. I realized then that the voice didn't sound human. It sounded like a recording being played back at the wrong speed, perfectly accurate, yet completely hollow. I realized that whatever was standing on the other side of that thin nylon wall wasn't my sister. It was something that had heard her voice in my memories, or something that was reading the vibrations of my fear. The voice outside the tent didn't stop. It looped with a terrifying, rhythmic precision. Please, I'm lost. It's so cold out here. Every syllable was a carbon copy of the last, the same catch in the throat, the same desperate pitch. It was the sound of a predator using a lure it didn't fully understand, but knew was effective. I clutched my hunting knife until my knuckles turned white, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew that if I unzipped that flap, I wouldn't find my sister. I would find the thing that was clicking in the dark. You're not Sarah, I whispered, my voice trembling. The voice stopped instantly. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and lasted for what felt like an eternity. Then the clicking returned, louder this time, coming from directly above the tent. Something heavy was shifting on the branches of the lightning-scarred oak tree. I gathered my courage and flicked on my high-lumen tactical flashlight, aiming it toward the thin nylon wall of the tent. The light revealed a shadow. It wasn't the shadow of a human or a bear. It was long, spindly, and distorted, with limbs that seemed to have too many joints. It was crouched just inches from the fabric. I realized I couldn't stay trapped in this nylon coffin. If that thing decided to tear through, I would have no room to fight. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed my bear spray in one hand and my knife in the other. I kicked the zipper up and lunged out into the freezing yellow mist. The beam of my flashlight cut through the fog like a blade. I spun around, scanning the perimeter of my camp. At first, I saw nothing but the skeletal silhouettes of the trees. Then, my light caught two reflective orbs about 7 feet off the ground, tucked behind a thick cedar bush. They weren't eyes, not exactly. They were pale, milky spheres that didn't blink. As I moved the light up, the creature stepped out. It was impossibly thin, its skin the color of wet parchment stretched tight over a frame of jagged bone. It had no hair, no ears, and its face was a smooth, featureless mask, save for a wide, horizontal slit where a mouth should be. It didn't growl, it didn't hiss. It looked at me and then its mouth began to vibrate. "You're not Sarah," it said. My own voice. It had played my own words back to me with such perfect accuracy that for a second I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just mimicking sounds, it was stealing them. The creature took a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette being pulled by invisible strings. I sprayed a massive cloud of bear spray into the mist between us. The creature shrieked, a sound that combined the screech of a hawk with the grinding of rusted metal, and retreated into the shadows. I didn't wait to see if it would return. I grabbed my pack, leaving my tent and sleeping bag behind. I had to get to the limestone bluffs. If I could get my back against a rock wall, I might stand a chance. But as I stumbled through the blinding fog, I heard a new sound. It was the sound of a zipper. Z-z-z-z-z-zip. The exact sound of my tent opening. And then the sound of my own heavy, panicked breathing echoing from the trees behind me. It was following and it was learning. My boots slipped on the wet limestone as I scrambled toward the high bluffs. The fog was so thick now that it felt like a physical weight against my chest, muffling the sound of my own footsteps. But it didn't muffle the sounds behind me. Click, click, click. The creature was no longer hiding. It was moving through the canopy above me, the sound of snapping branches following my every move. Then the voices started again, a cacophony of stolen memories. I heard my father's deep laugh, a sound he hadn't made in years. I heard the bark of a dog I had owned as a child. It was raiding my mind, throwing out every familiar sound it could find to see which one would make me stop, which one would make me look back. "Leave me alone," I screamed into the gray void. Immediately, the forest went silent. I reached the base of the great bluff, a sheer 100-foot wall of cold stone. I pressed my back against it, holding my knife out in front of me. I was cornered, but I had nowhere else to run. The fog began to swirl, and out of the gloom, the figure appeared. It was standing 20 feet away, its long, spindly limbs twitching in a grotesque rhythm. It tilted its head, and its mouth opened wide, stretching almost to the edges of its jawless face. Then it spoke, but it wasn't a voice from my past. It was my asterisk voice from only a few minutes ago, perfectly replicated, but layered with a wet, gurgling undertone. "Leave me alone. Leave me alone." It began to crawl toward me on all fours, its spine arching like a starved predator. Just as it prepared to lunge, a sudden, sharp gust of wind tore through the canyon. The heavy yellow fog shifted, momentarily thinning out as the first true light of dawn hit the top of the bluffs. The creature stopped. It recoiled as if the light were a physical blow. It let out a sound I will never forget, a screech that sounded like 1,000 voices screaming in unison, all of them distorted and wrong. It turned and scrambled up the rock face with impossible speed, disappearing into a dark, narrow crevice high above the tree line. I didn't move for 3 hours. I stayed pinned against that rock until the sun was high in the sky and the fog had completely vanished. Only then did I dare to move. I hiked back to my campsite, but there was nothing left. My tent had been shredded into ribbons, not by claws, but by something that looked like it had been trying to peel the fabric. My camera was smashed, and the memory card was missing. I made it back to my car by sunset and drove until I reached a town with a hotel. That night, as I sat in the safety of a brightly lit room, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the caller ID. It was from my own number. I played the message. It was 10 seconds of silence, followed by the sound of a zipper, zip, and then a voice that sounded exactly like mine, whispering, "I'm lost, it's so cold out here." I sold my hiking gear the next week. I don't go into the mountains anymore, and I certainly don't trust the silence, because I know that somewhere in the Ozarks, there is something that has my voice, and it's still waiting for the fog to return.